Welcome back, everybody, to Satisfactionist Live. I am your host, Ben Olmos, and today we're going to be getting into a very interesting topic. This is one that I have really kind of have a lot of. Well, I have a lot of things to talk about, right? So today we are talking about monsters, and joining me for this very interesting episode is Mr. Blake Smith. Blake, how are you?
Doing well.
Wonderful. Nice to have you. And welcoming back Karen Stollznow. Karen, how are you?
Hi. I'm well, thanks.
Fantastic.
Good to be here.
Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for coming back. And one of the things that is, I think, very interesting about this topic, and we're going to get into Monster Talk, and we're going to talk about the Monster Talk podcast. And really, this topic is very interesting for a number of reasons. It's because there's a lot of belief around the supernatural, around things like the Loch Ness Monster, like Bigfoot. And my wife and kids tease me all the time because I grew up in the West, and you hear stories all the time of Bigfoot because Pacific Northwest is right there. There's a lot of believers out there. And I jokingly say that, one of these days they're going to find something and then it's going to put all the myths to rest. But this topic is very fascinating because, there's a lot of directions that it really, really kind of goes. And what I think Blake and Karen do is really kind of dive into this. So, Blake, I want to start with you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And if you could, why Monster Talk? How did it come into being? And, where have you kind of gone and explored these topics on the show?
Well, we started about 10 years ago. Really, by this summer, it'll be 11 years ago. But we love monsters, and we're skeptical people who believe in science communication. So at the time we started, podcasting was still very, very much in its early days. And we thought it would be an interesting opportunity to sort of provide a counterpoint or counter view to the predominant view, which is this is the way media typically covers things, of having monster stories, TV series with 95% monsters and a little 5% skeptic at the end. And we thought we would do something sort of the inverse of that. Here's a little bit of monster legend, and here's what the facts are, and using monsters as a springboard to talk about critical thinking and science and all kinds of interesting things. I mean, everybody loves monsters, and they are a great way to introduce the ideas of belief. I think sort of my go-to statement is, within the world of monsters, you can see the entire spectrum of human belief writ small. And it's kind of a safe space to talk about belief and understanding, perception, cognition, and all kinds of things, and monsters. So that's nice.
And monsters. And so Karen, we talked previously when we had you on. Your background is in linguistics.
That's right.
And language. But what kind of brings you to this topic and brings you to the show? And how do you contribute? How do you bring your scientific research mind into this realm?
Well, I'm an expert in Bigfoot language. But no, I think that linguistics often comes into play when we talk about monsters, and there are usually lots of language or communication related claims. But I think Blake and I are generalists when it comes to our interests in critical thinking and skepticism. So we're interested in not only monsters, but also psychics and ghosts, and so lots of other strange, anomalous claims that are out there. So I don't think that sometimes I've been presented as a professional skeptic, and I think Blake has as well. And there really aren't any professional skeptics, or there aren't any professional ghost hunters. There's no degree in this. There's no accredited course that you can do. It's really
or paycheck.
And definitely no paycheck. So it's really just a hobby. It's something that we're terribly interested in, and we've done a lot of reading and research and hands-on investigation. Blake was talking about, we look at various phenomena. We also look at individual claims too. That's a really good way to not open a belief or a theory, to really look at something deeply, and to explore it. So I think that my linguistics background does come into play often, but I mean, not always. Really, I think we just like to do a lot of research and find out what we can about a topic, and we just use whatever skills or that we have to address whatever comes up.
Well, one thing that so a couple things that I think about actually when I hear this topic, and I share your approach in that it's hard for me to right off the bat just dismiss a person's belief, right? And truly, I mean, there are people who believe the things that they've seen, the things that they've read, the things that maybe they've heard to their core. And something that I'm reminded of is I'm trying to I can't put my name on the researcher who mentioned this, but I remember reading some work around memory, and them saying that we don't remember things like we assume we do. We only remember the last time we remembered that thing, and that memories change over time because we lose certain elements of the story, certain elements of reality, and our brain kind of puts in our little nuggets of information that kind of make sense for us. But sometimes what we recall weeks, days, months, years down the road is nothing near what actually happened, and sometimes it's not until somebody says, "Oh no, that's not the way it happened." Right? It actually these are the things that happened, or they introduce something that alters your memory that you then start to remember it differently. And I think about that because when we think about where our mind wanders with stories and with the supernatural, with folklore, a lot of that, is it really truly that we've seen it, heard it, believe it, or is it just a kind of a supplanted memory from things that we've been exposed to?
Mm-hmm.
I suspect you might be thinking about Elizabeth Loftus, who did a lot of work on that kind of topic. She's kind of the go-to, but there's other people who've followed up on that. But
Yeah.
It's the way we remember in reality, I think, is pretty radically different from the way we think we remember. And there's this whole concept of metacognition and thinking about thinking. And what happens is these memories are constantly being reconstructed. Every time we recall a memory, we're rebuilding the memory. And it's really easy for that to become corrupted. And of course, a lot of the sort of activities that happen around paranormal investigation include things like hypnotic regression, and those kind of things can be really destructive to memory accuracy. So, one of the first things we try to get people to understand is that while the most compelling evidence in the world for us as humans is anecdotes, it's the absolute least reliable in terms of sort of proving something really happened.
Yeah, and sometimes you'll have people who believe that they're positioned as trained observers, like police officers or pilots, who are often just put forward as being experts when it comes to if they've had a particular experience or they've witnessed something. But everyone has issues when it comes to memory. It's really something that we all suffer from. So it's not like if people tell a story and then retell it years later and it's different, that they're lying or anything. They're just misremembering what has happened, and have had a lot of influences over time that have affected that memory.
So what I've when thinking about this topic, it's interesting because in my mind I'm like, well, do we go with the folklore of things like Loch Ness or the New Jersey Devil? Or do we go down this road of the supernatural and things like the shadow people I mentioned to Karen last time we were talking, where you hear these bizarre stories, but these kind of like bizarrely uniform stories, of things like that. I guess what are some of the more intriguing things, or have you come across anything that you've found it difficult to debunk?
Well, you want to go first, Karen? Or you want me to?
Um, uh, well, I think everything, in a sense, can be difficult to debunk, and we don't go into our work trying to debunk a claim or a phenomenon. We like to look at specific cases, but also we look at something as a whole, whether it's ghosts or psychics. So I think all stories pose challenges when people are involved and they've had personal experiences and sightings, and they truly believe in what they've experienced and seen. And so we don't disbelieve them just off the bat. We like to go in and look at a story or look at a claim and look into the history, and to use the scientific method where we can to investigate a claim. So I think that all claims really pose challenges in that regard. And it's not something that you can really do in 5 minutes. I mean, we've treated, I think, hundreds of topics over the years, and it's something that you devote a lot of research to. But we just don't dismiss things out of hand.
True. I think yeah, difficult to debunk is interesting. I think, in fact, it's the opposite. It's the difficult to prove. Like, that's where we really find our challenges. Like just today, for example, I mean, one of the things I'm absolutely fascinated about is video and photographic cases where people find weird things in their photos or videos that, and that comes from security cameras or, all kinds of places, or just, candid photographs, or people go back to look at wedding photos and see things they didn't remember happening. And you get a variety of things where people, first of all, they don't remember anybody else being there when they took a photograph. So now a blurry figure in the background, is it really someone in the background, or is it a ghost? And it's like, that's the question. And people go to these places like really easily. Like if they see a photograph and it becomes proof of something they believe in. Literally today, earlier this afternoon, my wife was showing me a video on the site next door where one of my neighbors had a surveillance camera, and the surveillance camera captured some very strange footage of something flying away from their door. And in the comments, there were probably 60 comments already, and it had only been posted earlier in the day. And it's like, it's an angel, it's a ghost, it's all these different things. And it's like, if it's an angel, it's a weird, like 3-inch tall angel. Look at the actual scale. Like, I mean, I'm not saying angels can't be 3 inches tall, but why would a security camera capture a 3-inch tall guardian angel flying away from your doorknob? It just seems like a weird spiritual manifestation. Or, hear me out, maybe it's an insect and the camera's not really set up for really capturing good motion, So there's all kinds of interesting, cases like that. And it's like knowing how cameras work and how these things record and, taking a critical approach. These are skills. Nobody teaches this in school. You get a camera and you think you're capturing reality, and the camera is 15 frames a second and blurs stuff and it's motion active. There's all kinds of factors.
Right.
Yeah, and one of the things that we always try to do as well is to look for natural explanations before seeking supernatural or paranormal ones. So in the case of a video and it looks like there's an angel or a ghost, to see if that could possibly be a spider or a fly or something else, instead of immediately jumping to a paranormal explanation.
Right. Well, I think it's probably just very easy for us to, kind of make that leap. When something can't easily be explained, well, then it must be some supernatural interference that is the reason why.
It's certainly the fun explanation, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was
Especially if you could tie an incident to it as well. If there's been a recent death in the family or something like that, and then you have an experience like this, and it would be easy to think, oh, this is a visit from that person. They've come to say goodbye. And so again, we paste a narrative to it that suits our beliefs.
Well, that's true, and there have a number of stories, kind of speaking on that, where if somebody's recently lost a loved one or somebody was in the hospital, people have had dreams that are almost in connection with somebody who's going through pain or things of that nature. And I myself personally, I do find those things sometimes very difficult to rationalize and explain. And you have, at least for me, I have no. The only thing I can do is believe what they're saying, because I don't have any evidence to the contrary, and it didn't happen to me, and it's not my memory or experience. So how could I certainly say that that it's not true? Um, but, it reminds me of so Jonathan Haidt is a very popular moral psychologist. He's written a number of books. One of the books, The Happiness Hypothesis, he talks a lot about this contrast between what we know as a religious belief versus what we know in the science. And through the book, he does this really kind of interesting comparisons of both. But the one thing that he talks about at the end of that book is the sensation or that feeling of awe. And he says, the one thing that's very challenging when it comes to awe is that it can't be replicated in the lab. And that when you ask people to explain what awe is, because more times than not, they will either make a circular motion around their chest or they will look up every time.
wow.
And he says, why do people do that? What instinctually, when we talk about awe, why do we feel that way? Why do we do that? And so to me, that is what's kind of the fascinating thing about human beings, is that sometimes across cultures, sometimes across societies, there's just these kind of common beliefs or ways of doing things that string everybody together, but we have no idea why.
Are we looking up to the awning?
Yeah, I guess looking up to the heavens and circle around the heart, connecting the heart to the emotions, that kind of thing. But we really do love the folklore behind a lot of these stories, and so we do usually start our shows by delving into that folklore and delving into people's personal experiences before we then look into the science that's behind it.
I mean, I think so many people think of science as being kind of a fun ruiner, and I think I like it as expanding the world and like better understanding what's real and what we can know. And there's lots of things we can't know. You were talking about what can we, cases we can't debunk. A perfect example is just someone has a weird situation where they wake up and see a loved one who's dead. And, then they go back to sleep. And then the next morning, that totally happened. I saw a loved one. They spoke to me. They told me everything was fine.
Yeah.
There's no evidence for it, but it's powerful,
Well, science has explanations for those as being bereavement hallucinations or grief hallucinations. But it's really difficult to discount someone's personal experience.
Exactly.
We like to replicate phenomena where we can to say, well, this is how this possibly could have happened. But when it's a personal experience, it's difficult to do that. But I think one of the things we do like to do is to look for possible solutions. So sure, you can think, oh, science ruins everything. And but I think that excitement of solving a mystery is equally exciting as having a strange experience.
Yeah, something about facts and logic and the scientific method just is so just not fun.
Well, we try to find the fun. I mean, like, I'm probably one of the most skeptical people my friends ever run into, I mean, but at the same time, when I'm out in the dark driving around, I'm always expecting and hoping to run into a Bigfoot, literally. It's like I would love that to be true. I don't think it's true. I don't think there's enough evidence to support it, but I want it to be true. And I certainly understand why people do believe in it. And I
Oh
just
yeah, and we're humans, so we have superstitions and we have blind spots, and so we're as susceptible as anyone else to poor thinking.
Yeah, I mean it's fascinating to me uh, the ways that we allow our minds to kind of wander and bring us to these kind of interesting places. A few years back, I was teaching for a university, and I was doing podcasts with different speakers, and we had someone come in onto the show who had conversations and like lengthy conversations, sit down with her deceased daughter, and
Oh,
every bit of those conversations, and she wrote an entire book about it, and how it started, and how it continues on. Who am I to sit there and interject and say, oh no, that that can't possibly be right.
yeah. And I
Um,
think in some cases it's not even worth it to debunk someone's personal experiences. I think if you've got a psychic who's out there making millions of dollars off people and ripping people off and lying to them, it might be one thing to expose them. But if it's a person having an experience that comforts them, then who are we to take that away from them?
Absolutely, absolutely. But speaking about that, so we've had some pretty flamboyant, if you will, folks out there who have talk about being channels to loved ones and things of that nature. Um, it sounds like you've probably had a few of these folks maybe on your show, or at least explored that topic. Um, have you ever found anything in these conversations though on your show that have I don't know, have anything that has stumped you, or that to this day it's probably one of the things that you still kind of scratch your head about and wonder.
I have a not something that's come up on the show, but there are some really interesting photographs that I've been investigating. There's some real classic ghost photos, and I don't think ghost photography is indicative of spirits. Like there's so much evidence of hoaxing and other reasons why things happen, but there are a few that are like really peculiar. Like I don't know, there's not a real clear indication of how the photographic error happened. Like, there's not a clear indication of fakery, and people have stories about them that are interesting, but I just don't think there's anything there that really supports the hypothesis that there's ghosts or spirits or
Mhm.
whatever. But I do find some of them very interesting, and I love investigating them. So, and I apologize. I keep grabbing my head. I have a bad headache. I took some Tylenol,
Oh,
but I'm working through it. So
yeah.
I'm trying not
They
to do the
can't
whole interview like this.
they can't see that when they're listening anyway.
That's true. There you go.
Uh,
Yeah,
so
go ahead, Karen, I'm sorry.
I wrote a book called Would You Believe It? And
Yeah.
it's a collection of experiences from skeptics and scientists and atheists. So people that you wouldn't expect to have had paranormal like experiences. And Blake is a contributor to that book. And I don't know if we've got time to go into your story, but we certainly look at a lot of cases like the grief hallucinations. There are ghost stories and people having strange sightings and just inexplicable, well, seemingly inexplicable events that scientific people, have experienced. And in some cases, they give an explanation. In others, they really don't know what happened. And so, yeah, we still love these kinds of stories, even if we do seek answers to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it seems that there. I remember as a kid, I grew up in Central California, and I remember there was this big hoopla one year because the Virgin Mary was found on the side of somebody's house, and like just thousands of people were coming to this house to view what was, to them it was a miracle.
Right.
Mhm.
I when I hear about those things, and I don't know, maybe I'll get some hate mail for this, but when I hear about those things, I'm always like, I mean, really, like, just all of a sudden. But then you've heard some interesting stories. I mean, growing up Catholic, you hear a lot of very interesting stories of miracles, and
Oh, yes.
it's I wasn't there. I can only go by what I've heard from those people who observed it and passed it down.
Mhm.
But miracles are a very fascinating topic for me because some of them are quite amazing. But I again I'm a skeptic that way, and it's like, can it be replicated?
Well,
We
go ahead, Karen. You go first.
we had one of those, we'd call them a Marian apparition. When I was a kid growing up in Sydney, there was a fence post, and on the fence, Mary would appear at a certain time of day, and there was a call for this to be labeled as a miracle, and for the Catholic Church got involved. And it turned out in the end, anyway, that it was just the light shining on the fence at a particular time of day and giving this Marian kind of look, this kind of appearance. If people Google it, I think it's the Waverley Mary or something, and it's a very interesting image. But certainly Catholicism is really full of mysticism and miracles. Portraits leaking oil, and people having the stigmata on their hands, Padre Pio, that kind of thing. It's really very big in Catholicism.
Yeah, and I think, like, and some people have a very low threshold for what constitutes a miracle. Like in my family, my mother and father are very fundamentalist religious, and they believe. My mother would say, like, if my father gets a check, she would say, "The Lord sent in some money," and I'm like, I'm pretty sure that wasn't the Lord; it was the guy my dad did work for. But it's like whatever people's threshold is, it
It's an
varies.
interpretation.
Right, right. And like some people see literally everything is done by God, and some people see that the world's, driven by rules and a little bit of chaos. And, I kind of fall in the other camp, but I understand the beauty of seeing a world that's full of miracles and wonder, and the idea that there's somebody guiding us through the world and protecting us. That's really comforting. Um, I
I
don't,
like
it
the way
doesn't
you
work for
say
me,
that.
but it's like, it's a great, no, I remember what it was like. I remember as a believer, I remember what it was like to be in a world where everything had a purpose and we were protected. It was great. It was really comforting. It just didn't seem to comport with reality when I like really dug into it. And so it doesn't work for me, but I understand that it's very appealing and lots of people see it that way. But what constitutes a miracle is a wide spectrum of things. And so yeah, and sadly, a lot of miracles are performed by people with good intentions, who try to help sort of create those effects. We call that pious fraud. It's well intentioned, but I think it fools a lot of people, and sometimes it's not well intentioned, and sometimes it rips people off financially. So yeah,
Yeah, and unfortunately, there is a lot of that. There's a lot of greed
yeah.
in the
Oh,
business
yeah,
of miracles. Um,
absolutely.
there was a book I read a little while ago by Kurt Anderson, Fantasyland, how America went haywire.
Oh, I've got that in my reading list. Okay, yeah,
And it's an interesting book because he's definitely he would be considered a non-believer, and he chronicles a lot of it's not just religion, it's also politics, it's also kind of American folklore, and just kind of how we've bought into certain stories about America, about kind of our foundation, and some things that have really kind of guided the way that we think today. And he goes through and just kind of takes it apart, deconstructs it, and puts it into a little bit more of a realistic frame of understanding. And I myself, I mean, I struggle with that. As I mentioned, I grew up Catholic, and there are times when it's I do find comfort in feeling like there's a bigger power out there who um, uh, kind of I don't have the answer of Big Bang versus religion. I don't know. I science even changes its point of view on things, and so I'm kind of blissfully ignorant of not knowing exactly which direction to go. But I tend to fall um, uh, more on the belief of a higher power than I do in other things. But even that, I mean, there's so much scientific evidence to show that what has been written is there's some gaps. There's some explanation that needs to happen between kind of how you're raised in a believer's world versus what you know and see and understand about the universe and of science and
Mhm.
cosmos and are the history of this rock spinning around in space. So,
Yeah,
I
I
think
grew up in Australia, which is a lot more secular than the United States, and so I think you're right. When you're socialized into a belief system, can be very difficult to question that or to think outside of that. So Blake is very unique coming from his background to have turned into a skeptic.
yeah. I mean, we had snake handling churches in my hometown. We're pretty. I mean, it was really a new. I don't know. I maybe knew two atheists growing up at all. At all. It was just unusual, and it still is unusual down here. But I think I have a lot of respect for the human need for belief. And I guess one of the things we have all this cognitive power, and we have this ability to do abstraction and planning and all these sort of things. And people wonder about consciousness, and we dream. But what really makes us special as animals, I think, is that we have the ability to find meaning. And like
Mhm.
meaning is so important to us.
meaning and
Eh,
purpose.
Meaning and
Yep,
purpose.
yep.
And like I think some people look for a meaning in life, and I think one important thing is to learn that your meaning for life doesn't have to be the same as everyone else's. But
Mhm.
another thing is the significance of occurrences can become an obsession. And I know people who become obsessed with finding patterns, and they believe these things have special meaning, whereas other people would see those are just coincidences. And
Mhm.
that kind of stuff can become an obsession. And it's like our special skills at finding correlations from relationships can like send us down paths into conspiracy and basically lead to madness. So you have to have those sort of I think an important role of a skeptic is to be there for your friends and to just offer the opportunity to say, are you sure, or how do you know that? And if you don't have those things, if you just go down that rabbit hole and live in the world where everybody believes every kind of conspiracy, it leads to an entirely fantasy-based life, and many people enjoy that. But I think it's dangerous. I think it can undermine the ability to, well, like right now we're in a world where we have this virus going on, and you've got all these different conspiracy theories and different political takes on the efficacy of things. And it's like there is evidence, there is a rational way to look at this stuff. You could look at the facts. You don't have to rely
the,
on hints and
the
superstition and
science is
yeah,
published. It's out
yeah
there. It's not a
but
mystery.
the currency of scientific skepticism and rigor has been lost lately. I think as a culture, we've like really lost track of what it means to be rational, to use critical thinking. And like, we use monsters to sort of examine these issues in a way where you can kind of step away from these big issues and learn the
Mhm.
basic skills of critical thinking to think about Bigfoot and Nessie or ghosts or that kind of stuff. And it's a little bit safer to hone your skills, and then you can take those skills and apply them to other issues bigger than monsters. And I think that's where I see the value of our show and our research and our work.
Now it's very interesting. I like it what fascinates me is how our minds change, even in regard to our technological advances, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's hilarious. So growing up as a kid, and I have a feeling that we're all within a very close a proximity generation wise here. So you all probably remember the evils of Alice Cooper and Ozzy Osbourne speaking devilish tones to you through your records. And if you only played them backwards, you would hear the message of Satan and he would compel you to do terrible things. And then CDs came out and the devil stopped talking to us.
Talks in different ways.
And you never hear stories of, it's like MP3s are kind of hard to play in reverse. So you don't hear the devil talking to you anymore. And so now, since then, the devil can't get to us as long as we can find a way to only play the track in one direction. The devil can't get to you.
Well, there's still secret symbols everywhere, I mean, like, the Illuminati's everywhere, lizard people and, but we're going to find our symbols and our secret meanings. That's what we do. Yeah.
And whatever technology we have at the time.
I'd like to believe that the satanic panic ended, but it feels like we're easing right back into another one. So it is very freaky.
Yeah, that's true. Now we've got the QAnon and all sorts of things that are out there. Out of curiosity, have you all ever explored the extraterrestrial side of things? Somebody I listen to, love hearing stories about is I love Joe Rogan, right? A lot of people hear Joe Rogan. Bob Lazar, who has a show out on Netflix and talks about his encounters with working at Area 51 and evidence of UFOs, things of that nature. Ever gone down that road?
Absolutely, a lot.
Literally gone down that road, right? Like, yeah.
Well, because that's a little bit different than the supernatural, because these are physical things, right?
Yeah. You want to go first, Karen? I don't want to step on you. So.
Oh no, please.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, I think we're both super interested in this. I know Karen and her husband have done a lot of stuff in Colorado with the local UFO scene and doing some interesting investigations there. I grew up listening. Well, I say after I got out of the Navy, I spent a lot of time listening to Art Bell and really got interested. And I was a huge X-Files fan. And so I really looked into Lazar's stuff. I'm super skeptical of him.
We did an episode on him as well.
Yeah. I find his he's basically a core part of UFO myth in America. So I mean, he's an important character to us culturally, which is weird to say, but I don't find his story particularly compelling. Yet it's become absolutely central to the core elements of what makes up the UFO story in America. I mean, it goes from Kenneth Arnold and the original UFO sightings of the flying saucers to the Roswell crash, sort of some a dip, and then Stanton Friedman, and you got the Betty Barney Hill stuff, and then you start to get all these conspiracy theories in the 80s about the cover-ups, and then Lazar stuff fits right into that. And I don't think if we didn't have Lazar, we probably wouldn't be able to enjoy the X-Files. I just don't think that would exist. Well, and I like the X-Files,
So what then is pardon me, what then is your take on some of the recent footage that has been declassified by Navy and Air Force? Does that help further support?
Well, that's a really good question. We've talked about that on a couple episodes recently. And that's sort of the AA Tip and the To the Stars Academy. We've had some interesting interviews in that regard. Personally, I'm very skeptical still.
Really?
but I think it's interesting. I mean, the thing is, the amount of money that was spent on that research is minuscule. I mean, people in the UFO world get super excited because you got government spending looking into aerial phenomena, and that's what they want, and they want disclosure. And sadly, I think disclosure is never going to come, mostly because there's nothing to disclose. I mean, they're looking for an alien disclosure. They're looking for that the government knows about aliens, the government knows about UFOs, the government's been hiding stuff. And I don't think there's any real evidence for that. But what there is evidence for is that weird things do happen in the sky. We do need to investigate whether those are foreign threats or something else. But they also need to be looking at the fact that human perception is terrible. I mean, we've got good technology, but even the technology itself can be flawed. And the human flaws and the technological flaws together leave a lot of room for mystery. And what you make of that mystery largely depends on your worldview. If you're in a worldview where you think there's secret bases and extraterrestrial or other, I think it's important to remember that the extraterrestrial hypothesis is only a small spectrum or a small piece of the spectrum of what people think this stuff might be. There's a lot of people who believe whatever's piloting these crafts are coming from under the earth or from the future, or they're ultra dimensional. There's all these different interpretations, and let's not leave out demonic, because there's plenty of people who think they're demonic. So when you have a mystery, you got all these different interpretations. I say parsimony. Be the most conservative you can. What does the evidence support? And does that evidence lead to any conclusions that exist in the terrestrial world that we understand right now? And I think there's still plenty of room for human perception and mechanical issues to be the cause of a lot of this stuff. I hope we study foreign alien phenomena, because if it's coming from another country or another planet, I want to know about it. I want to know about foreign threats. But I think things like the To the Stars Academy have revealed themselves to be primarily entertainment and revenue based. I think they're pushing for particular narratives and cultural narratives. And I think that the people behind them have really personal agendas about there being real aliens. But I don't think that the evidence really supports that. So
very interesting. There's a lot of fun. There's a lot of fun footage to look at, and a lot of things that make you scratch your head.
Oh, it's good fun.
Yeah. Yeah. But at the end of the day, we're still far short of actual proof.
It's very exciting because it got on the front of the New York Times, and it's like, ooh, that's something, and it is something. But if you look at the people behind those articles, they're not disinterested parties. Those are UFO people. I'm excited for them to get their stuff, on the front page, but there's more to it. I mean, there's a lot going on there besides just, is there aliens or is there secret aircraft? There's a lot of agenda around pushing a UFO narrative. And
there's a real culture.
Yeah, there is.
People
to
get into that.
So.
But we typically on our show we'll bring on scientists, or we'll bring on authors, and so usually skeptics. We haven't had contactees or abductees on the show.
My headache's going better.
It's the aliens. They put something.
That's probably what it is. That's probably what it is.
Yep.
I mean, I would, again, just like Bigfoot, I would love there to be aliens. I'd love them to visit. I'd much prefer aliens to ultra-dimensional demonic visitors, I have to say.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah, we are very egotistical when it comes to aliens as well.
No, I am. No.
We're very convinced that they've. You would think if you have the ability to create something like a vehicle to travel through space, that you could also create. I mean, we create small, tiny cameras, and we have drones. You would think they would just release them into the atmosphere as like insects.
Yeah, for me, it's like saying that any unidentified aircraft is an alien spaceship. It's kind of like you don't get to the phone in time. That was probably a famous movie star trying to call me. I mean, it's like, well, I mean, couldn't it have just been a friend? No, it's like, that was Tom Cruise. This was my big break and I missed it. Okay, whatever. It's a stretch.
It's the week you didn't buy a lottery ticket that you would
right.
have won.
Yep.
No, it's very true. It's all very interesting stuff, I have to say. And I think one of the things that I love about this topic is just, kind of how fun it is. I love hearing UFO stories. I love hearing Bigfoot stories. Loch Ness, I'm not so much into anymore. Because it just,
Why is that? That's interesting.
why?
Yeah.
Well, it just seems like they've dredged the lake. They didn't find anything.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Like,
Well, you don't think it's possible, and just hear me out now, that Nessie is an ultra-dimensional creature that ports in and out? Is that's as plausible to me as aliens? All right. I mean,
certainly is possible. Certainly is
yeah.
possible.
So, yeah. You're right. I mean, you would think there's a lot of reasons to be skeptical in Nessie, although there's plenty of people who see lake monsters, and I think
there are lots of lake monsters. Yeah, not
yeah,
just Loch Ness Monster.
We are the science show about monsters, and one of the most fascinating things that's come out in the lifetime of our show is the growth of environmental DNA studies. So they can now take water samples from a lake, and then they can do genetic testing on that and get a broad spectrum of all the different life forms that are in the lake. It's amazing. So they can amplify the DNA samples and tell you what's in the lake. And they've done that with Nessie now and some other lochs. And sadly, nothing similar to a plesiosaur or a large unknown reptile or anything like that's come up. So I agree with you. There's plenty of reason to be skeptical. But it's also a great example of how science can actually tackle these questions and help you find out whether there's any reason to continue believing these things.
Exactly.
Yeah, the creator of Dilbert, Scott Adams or Arnold?
Adams.
Yeah. So I enjoy his. First of all, he's just a fun guy to listen to. He has some very far out thinking on things. One of his far out thinkings that really kind of messes with your head a little bit is this belief that everything that we experience is uploaded into us overnight, and that we are all just living in the single day, and that we, like, all of our memories, everything is just a small glimpse in time, and it just evaporates and goes away.
Are you saying we're the product of overnight batch jobs? Is that what
yeah, really. That's kind of what it comes down to. And then you hear these interesting studies that are going on, like, for example, at Georgia Tech, where they're like, hey, if the brain is just sending out signals, and we can capture and interpret those signals from the brain, we can start to download memories. We can start to download what a person experiences and knows. And for that matter, if we can download it, we can also upload it. And that starts to get very fascinating, because then if we can download thoughts and memories and ideas, then what then is consciousness?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So Karen, as a linguist, you've probably observed that the process of converting our thoughts into language is not something you could quickly download, right? I mean, the way we think about ideas is really complicated, and turning those into something cogent is kind of a task, right?
Yeah, I mean, psycholinguistics, neurolinguistics, and cognitive linguistics aren't really my areas of expertise. My area is more meaning in language. So it's more the kind of thing that we're talking about, the interpretation of things that happen to us, and just making meaning. So yeah, that's not really my area as such. But and I don't think it's something that we treat too much on Monster Talk in general. It's certainly an interesting idea.
It is, but I was trying to think of like if you just are a person who journals and you sit down in the morning, you try to take your dreams and turn those into a narrative in writing. Like being able to take the brain waves of someone and then actually try to take that and turn it into something cogent and savable. I think there's a lot more trouble there than people realize. I think it's an interesting concept. I guess what I'm saying is, this will come as no shock, I'm super skeptical of that too.
well, well, you know, as things advance, as technology advances and we do more, there's a lot of very interesting things coming out when it comes to quantum computing and what we may be able to kind of take this next level
Yeah.
Of building kind of computerized brains, you know, through quantum computing. Um, yeah, there's a lot yet to be explored, and still a lot yet to become skeptical of, I guess, as well.
Well, I have high hopes. I mean, I've read Ray Kurzweil's stuff, and
Mhm.
I'm fascinated by this idea of the singularity.
Mhm.
And I don't want to sound like I'm a broken record, but I'm skeptical of that too. I mean, like the more I research into consciousness, it's like a lot of people think if you could capture all these thoughts and like into a frozen state, that you'd capture what it is to be a person. And I think if you really think about what you do during the day, like you have these moments where you're absolutely profoundly cogent and you really know what's going on. And then you have moments where you're an absolute dumbass. And like, how do you like you throughout the day, I run the spectrum of being moments where I think I'm a genius and moments when I'm an absolute idiot. And I don't know that I want all of that saved with the same fidelity. I don't. It's like,
Well, you know, it's interesting. I just finished listening to a podcast. It's called Transmissions. It was the story of Joy Division and New Order.
wow,
Um,
wow,
I'm a big Joy New Order fan.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and what was interesting about the podcast was they were talking about the song Blue Monday, which was really the
Sure.
song
Who
that kind of
doesn't? Yeah,
blew
yeah,
up the band. And
yeah.
they talk about the fact that, you know, they were running tape loops around the studio, around mic stands and everything else, and that the thing that makes that particular song the most interesting is the imperfections that are layered throughout the song. That it's not in perfect time. That even though it has this kind of constant beat, there are nuances to it that give it texture. And you know, you think about that in the context of you know, our own kind of realities and things like that. I mean, sure, we could download we may get to a point where we download thoughts, where we think of like, what is consciousness, what is a person. You know, all of that really comes into those kind of imperfect nuances, are what makes us more human than not. And so even if we have this perfect world where everything is digitized and synthesized and perfectly in sync, I don't think we'd accept that. I think we would reject something that would be so perfect.
I don't think we'll ever know, but that's. I can't even
But
get my computer to be perfect for a day or two, and these are relatively simple
that's
machines. Yeah,
that is true. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that on our show, you know, we're constantly questioning things, and there's a lot that we don't know, but there's certainly a lot that we do know as well. And
That's true.
you know, we're really
Yeah,
just to enjoy asking questions, and we don't always have to find answers, and we're always prepared to say we don't know something. And because a lot of people talk out of turn and say things that they shouldn't, and come up with solutions and explanations that might not be accurate. So we just really prefer to say we don't know when it comes to a lot of these kinds of things. And you know,
yeah.
we'll certainly find out more as we go along.
I
We
think
try.
ultimately
Yeah.
that really is true. I mean, there's just certain things that we don't know, and we have to go by a bit of blind faith, but blind faith guided by, and I think Blake will appreciate this, a bit of skepticism and critical thinking, and just kind of logical critical thinking, and not just buying into the fact that, um, you know, the easy answer is not always the best answer.
Right.
Mhm.
And sometimes bluntly we can't know. And being human is a very messy thing, but I think it's a beautiful thing. And I think we love embracing the fact that all these beliefs are part of the human experience. And like, yeah, we want to know, and we want to push for the best evidence-based stuff, and we want to get away from dangerous and scary thoughts that are not really based on reality. We've removed a lot of fear for people by showing them how the scary stuff in their life is not real, which is great.
Yeah,
but it's all part of being human. Yeah.
We do get a lot of emails from people who've thanked us for being able to explain paranormal-like experiences that they've had, and Blake has gone through a lot of this himself, talking about shadow people earlier. He's had some sleep disorder issues, and we've done a number of shows on that topic, and I think it's helped a lot of people to realize that the strange things that are happening to them have a logical explanation, that it's not demons or something frightening happening to them. It's just something that can be explained scientifically.
Like low blood sugar.
Well, low blood sugar, or sleep paralysis is the go-to. You feel like you're being attacked in your sleep, or something's sitting on your chest, or you're seeing weird figures in the middle of the night, and it's absolutely, it's absolutely realistic. Like, you're absolutely sure something paranormal is happening, and it's just a weird sleep disorder, and it's happened to me multiple times, and knowing what it was, it's a big chunk of like a third of the population it happens to, and if you don't know what it is, people think that they've been molested or that they are being attacked by aliens or demons. And it's like helping people, just that one little fact that it's a natural sleep disorder, or just a natural thing that happens during some people's sleep, has brought a lot of relief to many people. When it's happening, it's still scary. I still have it happen occasionally. But
in that moment, it feels very real.
Exactly. But and then you go, oh, no, it's just my brain messing with me. This is fine. There's not really a dwarf shadow person coming out of my closet,
Well, yeah. I mean,
not today.
I'm with you there, Blake. I've actually had, situations like that happen to me where, if I've indulged in a lot of sugar, for example, I will have the funkiest, weirdest, most out of body dreams. And it's weird. I mean, like, and I'm partially awake trying to wake myself up.
Yeah.
it is really very, interesting. But you have some real crazy dreams. But to wake up from that and say, well, every bit of what I just dreamt was real, or it was some message, or somebody was trying to, no, it was just, body chemistry was a little off.
Well,
it happened to people if they've had too much to drink, or as you say, if they've eaten too much sugar or something that's upset them for whatever reason, or they're jet lagged, lots of different reasons.
I tell you what, it's been, we've been doing this for 10 years, more than 10 years, and I'm tremendously proud of the work we've done together. And I'm so happy that we've had positive impact on people. And I hope we have many years to come of this work. I feel like it's fun. It's interesting. We learn more about science. We bring on all kinds of experts to look into this stuff. But it's just, we're also helping people and helping them understand the world better, and, sleep a little sounder. And it's great. Exactly. It's wonderful. So I'm happy to do it. I'm glad we've lived in a world where this technological stuff is possible. It's great. So.
Oh yeah.
Well, pardon me. Gosh. As we kind of draw to a close here and wrap things up, let me ask each of you this: what are you currently working on? And anything that is coming up that you'd like to tell people about, or maybe even where to find out more about Monster Talk, which is podcast. I know that, but where do you find more stuff about some of the things we've talked about? Or about you?
We go to patreon.com/Monster Talk. We've got more than 220 episodes out there, and we've been doing this a while. And we've got upcoming episodes. We're about to do some work on one of Karen's favorite topics, Coral Castle.
Yeah, Coral Castle, an interesting place in Homestead, Florida.
And we have started a series. We're going to pick that back up, looking at the sort of facts behind the myths in based on a true story movies. There's lots of movies where they say based on a true story, and we're doing a series called Debased on a True Story, where we go back and look at the actual what really was going on in those stories. I'm very excited about that series too.
Yeah, we've got a YouTube channel as well, in
That's
which
right.
we have that series, and my husband is also doing a show on there called Ask a Paranormal Investigator, in which people write in and they send in the kinds of clips that we're talking about, where someone thinks they've seen an angel or a ghost, and to ask, well, what is this? What's going on? And he looks at all different kinds of interesting phenomena. So yeah, we're doing that, and I think we're going to be working on your cryptids as well.
Yes,
At some point.
that's a recurring theme too. That we've got cases where it turns out, if you do an investigation, it turns out that the people reporting particular monsters actually saw a movie that inspired the monster sighting. And I'm not saying they don't believe that what they saw is real. I'm just saying there's a really weird coincidence where they see a movie and it seems to shape their experience. And I think there's something going on there. So.
And you find that as I've kind of read, and you find that that is what happens to a lot of people, to the point I was making earlier about memories is sometimes you see something and it becomes your own experience, even though it never happened to you.
Mm-hmm.
Like the way we process stuff sometimes feels a little more personal to some people, and again, that's not to diminish their experience or to demean. They're just people being people, and that's part of who we are, so.
Yeah,
clearly
absolutely.
We like to copy each other, whether we mean to or not. Yeah.
So. Yes. Yep. Lots of things.
Absolutely. Vanilla Ice knows that all too well.
I wish my wife were here. She can absolutely quote that song.
Word for word.
Word for word. I don't know if she can do it sober, but she sure knows it when she's had a drink or two. So. Hey, honey. What?
Well, Blake and Karen, thank you both so much for taking a little bit of time out to share a little bit about what you guys do. And for folks out there, definitely check out Monster Talk. There's a lot of very interesting, fascinating stories, and 10 years worth of content, which has just got to be really fun to dig into. And Blake, I'm noticing your library behind you, and you seem to have what is your collection? I'm trying to.
You're looking at my monsters and paranormal stuff. It's almost entirely cryptids, ghosts, witches, Bigfoot, all kinds of things like that. So this is all these are mostly my nonsense books.
That's awesome, though. That is fantastic.
Perfect environment for this kind of thing, for talking about monsters.
It's nice to have a library because a lot of this stuff's not available digitally. So being able to go grab a historic book it's beautiful. I love it.
Yeah, so. No, that's very true. And some of these things have limited publications, and you got to scour for books. And I do that more on the nerdy side, on the operations side, and I like biographies and things like that. Sometimes you can't find things digitally. You got to go search for them otherwise.
Yep.
Well, folks, thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and wrap things up. For those checking out Satisfactionist, thanks for you guys checking out this show, checking out other shows. We've got a number of things on the docket that have been coming up, and it has been really wonderful. And so we got more content coming. As a matter of fact, this Thursday we have a show with Chef Melissa Montebias. We're going to be talking about flour. So last time Melissa came on, we did a show about salt. I got a lot of good feedback about that. People were like, I didn't realize there were so many things to know about salt. This time we're going to be talking about flour, and primarily because I have really gotten into making pasta lately. And I've been having all sorts of issues, and I've been learning all things about flour and high fiber flour, seminola flour, like all kinds of different things. And so we're going to dive into flour and find out exactly why I can't make pasta.
This is cool.
So-
If you do flour and salt and then add a little water, you'll start raking in the dough. That's good.
I love it. But folks, thanks for joining us. Thanks for checking out Satisfactionist. Please check us out on Facebook, on YouTube. We recently also started streaming to DLive and Twitch. Got the podcast coming out as well. So we are out there. Appreciate your guys' patronage. If you like, feel free to check out satisfactionist.com. You can find all of our shows, past shows there as well. And if you see any merch, feel free to pick some up. Throws a little bit our way, and it helps us to create better content as we keep going. Thanks again, everybody. Thank you, Blake, and thank you, Karen. I appreciate your time. We'll catch everybody next time.